One recording.
Hi, folks, it's 6 o'clock. This is a special meeting of the Danville Board of Directors. This started our July meeting, it's June 27th, they started July meeting. All the directors are in the meeting. So we're all pages. So I have Tim, I have Dave, I have Melissa, my Clayton chair, Molly's on a planned absence. Administrators are here, Mark, Dave Shelley for now, Sarah, and now, and principals in there, with Rob and the public. Thanks everybody for coming. Starting off, are there any additions or changes to the agenda? Molly had one via email that I'll talk to you offline about.
I had a conversation with her. I'm on it.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
That's just one of those things that was gonna be brought up, and if you're handling it for.
Yeah, I got it. I'm
So we'll
on
leave
it.
that off the agenda for now. The next thing on the agenda, I've got 4 sets of minutes. Molly wrote them up various times. We can go through each of them if you'd like to. The first one was our regular meeting on June the 6th that she wrote up, and those were in your packet. The second one that we have was, meeting on June the 14th and meeting on June the 14th was about the warning. The first one of our meetings was the warning. Next meeting after that, June the 21st was a committee meeting. Oh, there's one on June the 19th as well, also about the warning. June the 19th. It's also about the warning where we signed the corrected warning to pass off to the clerk to get legal. And the last one was a building committee meeting. We'll do these all at once. If there's not any questions about any of these to the board, are there any questions about any of these minutes?
No.
Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve all 4 sets of these minutes at once. So I'm writing the next one, so making sure.
I'll make a motion. Revolve.
Or a motion to approve these 4 sets of minutes. And a second from Melissa. Are there any questions there? All in favor of approving these 4 sets of minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
1, 2, 3, 4, motion carries. Okay, so that's minutes. Moving down, the only administrative report we have for this month is the superintendent. You're on here if you haven't even tell us, because you're the only one who's going to be ready.
No, then, nothing in a lot of detail to add. I do want to, just let the board know that the opportunity to meet the agency's school construction coordinator, who's been on board for about a month. And they hired the facilities director from Middlebury College. Guy's been doing this work for 32 years. Did a meeting with him yesterday, and then with the state, and then had a separate meeting conversation with him later on in the day about this project here, the Danville project. Guy knows a lot. Good asset for the agency. The company, I'm trying to think, Bureau Veritas or whatever, that's doing the school study assessments. They were here in January. They did Danville and Barnet in the same week. They submitted the Barnet report, but not the Danville report. I suspect that it's because Danville's more complicated, but yeah, I mean, it's a bigger school, so than Barnet. And they still think that they're going to have that work done late this fall and submitted, and there's conversations going on about how to possibilities of funding some school construction, and there's work that has to be done. There's a task group that the legislature set up that is tasked with figuring out how are they going to divvy up money. You know, there's going to be there's 300 plus schools that are all going to need some, in a perfect world, we'll all need to access some school construction money. They have to come up with a process and decide if it's not necessarily the case of all 300 plus schools in Vermont are going to get school construction aid. Some smaller school districts with very, very small schools. I think nobody's owning this yet, but I think there's going to be likely to be some push from somebody to do some school consolidation. I don't think that that's necessarily an issue in CCFU or schools aren't that small. So we'll see what happens, but it'll be, the state treasurer is on this task force. He's all over the financing thing already. They've been looking at the model that was adopted down in Rhode Island. That was shown to the legislature. in the last session, and the legislature's excited about it. They kind of in the same place that Vermont was. They paused or they had a moratorium on school aid to construction that they had to lift, and the state voters passed a couple of big bonds to fund school construction. But the model for doing that, I think, is kind of interesting because they have like a baseline for in Rhode Island. It's not this doesn't necessarily transfer to Vermont, but in Rhode Island, if you have an approved project, you got a baseline of 35%, and then there's a sliding scale or additional criteria that if it's there's extra kickers in there, they will fund up to 85 to 90% of a school construction project, depending on how many of those additional thresholds you cross. So you might have, if it's a project where multiple districts are going to combine and share a school, that gets an extra 10 or 15%. It's that kind of an idea. I don't know all the different criteria, but they said it can go as high as 85 to 90%. Which is an interesting model, and the legislature was enamored with that idea. And Mike Peacock, who's the treasurer, is looking into this and how a model like that might work. And he's going to be responsible for making recommendations for the legislature on the financial side of it. So there is work going on. It's not moving as quickly as anybody would like. We're talking about next year sometime at the earliest that they'll have any kind of a plan out there, and then they got to figure out how they're going to get the money, how they're going to bond for it. The original school construction funding was shut down in 2007 because the state had exceeded its bonding capacity at the time. They just couldn't do it. Banks said no more bonds. So they stopped it, and then they just never restarted it. And 18 years later, or whatever. Now we're looking at restarting it. So I'll keep you
progress in progress. Yeah, in the building committee, we're sort of trying to figure out. We have no idea what's possible, what's coming. So we're on a little bit of a pause there.
I mean, I would say there's hope on the horizon, but it's going to come down to, can somebody come up with a funding source for school construction projects in Vermont, and who's going to get the money?
I think we just can't raise a big enough number on that. So
absolutely,
we just need to
absolutely.
We just need to see what's next in the world, and that's all we can be as well.
Right.
And proactive where we can be proactive, which we'll get to in a minute. Any questions for the people in time? All right, moving down to board items. Moving up is the July 19th additional spending.
Okay, that's been warned.
We're warned, right?
Been properly warned. We signed off on, the few of us reviewed the ballot today. We signed off on the ballot. They've been copied. We did the copying at central office for Wendy. She has those. She had to make 200 or 250 copies, and she said if you need more on election day, she'll make them on site. They're both going to be at the town hall. I'm looking for some suggestions from the board about how best to get out the community letter that I drafted, that you all have seen, or members have seen. I think it's in pretty good shape right now, based on, I appreciate the comments and feedback that I got from various board members on that.
So how do you guys want that delivered to the community? Do you want to deliver expressly to the school community, in addition to the wider community via the newspaper? You want to deliver to, you want to mail it? I don't have any idea how you guys want it done. I'd like to see them by parents.
Yeah.
I think that's probably our best pathway to clearing this up. I think that everybody, say two that I've spoken to, had no confusion about what happened. And people that if you need to answer some clarifying questions to what happened. But at the same time, since the vote, we had 300 people vote approximately the first time. I'd like to have 300 votes this time. So I think we don't know the votes. I'd like to not win this one 8-2, but even though that's winning, I'd like for it to be 9-2. So do you guys think that he should send that out to the Danville community via email, the parents and stakeholders? They get his newsletters. Do you think it should be published in the newspaper? Do you have any other ideas? Let's do it. And I'm listening to your ideas too, Mark. I'm not quite sure either.
Yeah.
I would say all of the above.
I would say complete transparency, just saying, every, is to mail in the letter. Making sure that the people you know, even without a computer. Have the opportunity to see that letter. And then also in the newspaper, and then send it home by your school email addresses. I'd rather have somebody see it 3 times than say, I didn't know about it.
All right, so do we have envelope stuffers? Do we volunteer envelope stuffers?
Are you talking about sending it to all the registered taxpayers in the town? You say, send it to everybody,
That's me.
all the registered voters, I mean? I'm just trying to.
The question today is, I'm not.
Even if somebody, I agree with that until, even if somebody isn't a registered voter, if they get a letter, they can register to vote. And so, what is the, they must have a resident list. One for each household. That way, instead of a household with 3 voters in it, the household will get one letter.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember, there's a name for that.
What is it, Ron?
Every mailing something. It's something that CCSD has used in the past to deliver mail to each of the households. It's not a perfect process. You're still going to miss some, but I mean, we can look into doing that, and that's something I really never conversation with Katie about that. And you send a letter. When she does it for CCSD, she sends it to a printer. The printer mails it using that methodology, something the post office. And then we still end up missing some homes. But the idea is to go to each physical address of the post office.
Okay, so if we do that, we submit the newspaper and then you send out an email to parents, so you know, text them. That pretty much covers, I think that seems like it covers a great number of people. And lets it be known that this is how we fix it. This is how we secure funding for the rest of the year based on mistake.
No problem.
All right, I'll talk to Katie tomorrow about how that works.
They
And get that started.
don't,
Yeah, and the school messenger thing, I mean, I could send one out tomorrow on that.
yeah, like that. That way the message gets going before this lands in paper. And then, you know, speak to the newspaper about that.
Okay.
My next question on that same subject is about the meeting that we discussed.
Yeah, you have to have an informational meeting within 10 days of July 19th. So you just need to schedule like we do around town meeting day. We always have 2, and one of them is always like the night before or something.
We have to schedule a meeting there. Now there's a hiccup. You're out of town, right?
I'm out of town. Yeah, I'm up in May.
The superintendent is out of town on this meeting, so Mike and Jesse's gonna come with some board members, and we're gonna have this informational meeting, and we're gonna explain. So if you're available, come sit next to me. But we gotta pick a day.
Wait, do you want us to?
But you can meet some people better. But I gotta pick a day that you're up. That's July the 19th is the vote. So I'd be looking for anything inside of 10 days on that, we can pick a day. A good day might be the 18th. That's within 10 days, the day before.
I'm available.
18th to 6 o'clock.
Okay.
And where is that?
That's the next question.
Okay.
You want to have it at town hall? Do you want to ask town hall? Do you want to have it just in the building?
The school board only. Yeah,
That was the school cafeteria. School cafeteria,
and do it on Zoom too.
please.
Okay.
So I need a Zoom one. I tried it. I was doing it yesterday and I am so inept. So I need somebody to cafeteria. A skilled Zoom somebody. On the team.
You can do that. I'll have to put you on the.
And that's an informational meeting, so everyone's on that. So
Huh? Between the two of you. Okay.
And then we're not needed for anything.
We're specifically not supposed to be there. It's a vote that we don't mind.
Right.
What time on the 18th?
Let's do 6.
6 p.m. in the CAF and Zoom.
Okay, and there's gonna be a presentation worked up on that. I'll give you a presentation. Mike will be there. Mike will be there. These are just to clarify questions. And everybody comes in and has them, they get to ask them. And, that's that, just informational meeting, not public meeting, not public comment, just information. So maybe a dialogue meeting. Okay. So we have a warning, we have to go, and we'll see each other again after that, and we'll have the result at some point. Will there be back?
I'll be back in the office on the 24th.
So we're back on the 24th. We'll know by then. Katie will probably be able to get us the results, or somebody will. Wendy?
Yeah, Wendy.
will.
Wendy will get the results.
Okay.
She'll let you know. And you can send me the good news in Maine.
There you go. Hopefully, to also get your vote in, get your 2 votes. in.
Yeah, I
Okay,
emailed Wendy to ask her when I can get
in
an
your house. If they're-
absentee ballot, so.
Okay. I don't want
You're sure to have 2 yes votes.
I don't want to influence any votes, but all right, your name.
I can tell you, my wife and I are both going to vote yes.
It's, all right. So we good on that, everybody? So I'm gonna go on to the next one, and the agenda item is the departure of Dave Schilling, but some of it's gonna be future of the works program, some of it's gonna be, shoot this missile or the sky. And we'll see what happens. So what I'd like to do is, I'll start with Dave. Can you tell us why you went to LI? Maybe.
Sure. The works programs, like, it's gonna be as woven as you said it was. The works program was a 2-year plan. It was a 2-year plan that was always questioned, are we gonna fund an administrator level director? When this year rolled around and I had teaching in it for the first half of the year, and then we hired the second half of the year between, we hired some great staff and they really stepped up. Seemed like a good opportunity to just think about what the text, right? Recognizing that despite what we had hoped, I don't think there was ever a place to continue that job past 2 years. And I don't think that should be local funding because it's a lot of money. So that was part of it. The LI job popped up and there was splats that happened later. And that's how that worked. For me, it's a chance to, for me personally, which is, I think, acting in a decision for you. It was a chance to continue in tech ed, to continue to serve students from the school in this region because LI is our designated tech center. And not have to figure out another job next year that maybe whatever one like career goals wants to be down. The funding for the example works.
And this, we talked privately about this. This is what we want. We want this a job like this one that advisor.
To be clear, I've not always wanted to move to LI.
No, that's not what you've always wanted.
I'm excited for the opportunity.
You talked more than
Yeah.
once about director.
Yep.
When you originally asked to present this program, if you were asked as the principal to hire on a second administrator to do a data works program, we wouldn't have said yes because we didn't know in person. But when you said, "Can I, Dave Schilling, move over here?"
Yeah.
The agreement was almost immediate murmur of assent because it was better to have Dave in the building than not have Dave in the building.
Right.
And so, we were happy to get you to stay.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you guys have any questions for Dave, let me know. Otherwise, I'm just gonna praise on him and then send him away. Okay, so here's what I remember, 3 years ago, whenever you were out of town and you were doing your evaluation, sitting in this room, there were 7 of us total, one member of the public, 5 other members, and Robert Egger wanted to speak publicly. He wanted, can we do this in the open? I'm like, well, Dave's not gonna like this, and I said, I wrangled that meeting for the executive session, down to the executive session, and Robert Egger said, I was gonna heap praise on the public. I know. So everybody here has respected you, you made a great difference here in this building. We appreciate your time. I've got some done prices. I'm gonna miss you, Dave. And we wish you the best of luck. We're not worried about the programming because like you said, you were phasing yourself out automatically. We were never gonna be able to fund that position. We can't fill the position that you're leaving because you can't ask somebody to work with no run. You can't call in an administrator and say, hey, here's a job that's got absolutely no future. You want it? But then, no, listen. So
You don't want the
let us
person.
see in the world, come to some game. I appreciate all your help. Anybody want to dump prices in a meeting, or you want to dump prices out? Because if you get to dump prices in a meeting, you go.
So,
So,
yeah, I do. So we're just finishing up the 8th year, my working with Dave. And I was joking with him the other day that I kind of been chasing him around because I came into Washington Northeast and the same as a sped director the same year that he took over as principal at Cabot School. I actually met him when I was interviewing and touring the schools, and that's a long, funny story, and I won't get into that tonight. Touring the schools at Packfield when I was already working there as a superintendent candidate. And I met Dave, and if you can picture Dave working as an interim principal that year, if you can picture Dave with his hair sticking out, which is a little bit of a challenge, but that's the kind of year that he was having as interim principal. And I remember going in with meeting him with Nancy Thomas as the superintendent, and Nancy's like, "So this is Mark Tucker, and actually I was interviewing for the sped director, and you're probably kind of busy, aren't you?" And Dave's like, "Yeah, I'm kind of busy." So we didn't get to talk much that day, but I worked with him for 2 years as a sped director, and then I took the superintendent job, and he went from being a colleague to being his supervisor. And then you left to come to Danville for 1 year or 2. I don't remember. 2 years? 1 year.
1 year.
1 year. And he left, bolted Cabot to come over to Danville. Danville scooped him up and stole him away from Cabot. And so then a year later, I came over here. I followed him over here. And now he's taken off again. And I told him the other day, I said, "I'm not chasing you anymore. Because I got 1 more year and then I'm done. And you're on your own. So, fly little bird." I know he's going to do a great job at LI. I am counting on him to build a really, really strong technical program in the Northeast Kingdom, because the Northeast Kingdom has not had a really, really strong technical program. And to a certain extent, I think that Danville School has suffered a bit because of that. This region needs a strong tech program. Danville is the only public school in the state of Vermont that's not designated to a public technical center. And those programs need to be something more than a way for them to generate tuition levels at any level they want to set. So they have a sweetheart deal. The Academy and LI have a sweetheart deal that they can set their tuition rate at any level they want, because they're not called tech centers. They're called
Comprehensive high schools.
comprehensive high schools because they offer technical education. So I'm counting on you, Dave, to build a good, solid program there that not only will attract most of the kids from Danville that want tech education, but also kids in Cabot. They had a good experience with LI this year. And I know that Becca is excited that you're going over there and looking forward to an opportunity to build even stronger connections between Cabot for her students that are interested in tech education. So,
Can I tag on that really quickly, because it's another part of the answer to, thank you.
yeah,
Another part of the answer to thinking about why are you going to LI. It's not, in my mind, it's not building a really strong program, it's continuing a really strong program that has been building over the past couple of years. The reason I specifically looked at the LI program was that I think that they're really seeing that as part of the identity.
yes,
And the opportunity to really solidify it, because it's part of a Northeast Kingdom high school experience. So, excited to continue on the work that we've been doing over the past couple of years to really move toward being a tech center.
yeah. Well, I didn't mean, I'm trying to praise you, not at the expense of the former director, but I think there's a lot more opportunity. I think there's a lot more opportunity at LI, and they need somebody that thinks that can think about tech ed as being integral to their learning environment there. They have a new head of school at LI. He's finished up his first year. My contacts with him from the first day I met him is like he gets who LI should be in the Northeast Kingdom. And so I think he's just an all-around nice guy. I think you're gonna like working with him. So
In our building, from our perspective, got some strong programming in the works program and some easier to build in the community as a job by job as a time. So What we use about it, and anybody else?
You'll be best.
And
Yeah.
I'm really grateful for this opportunity in the last 5 years. We've been through a lot at Danville. We've done a lot. This school is going to continue to be the center of this community. The folks over here talking about their phenomenal individuals, I think are going to continue that mission. When I came to Danville to begin with, it was evident to me when I walked around and met people and talked to you and Tim. Then quickly thereafter.
I know, yeah. Yeah.
Well, that comes in. So many people. Probably they all. That's small school, big family thing. And it is.
Bad too, as a parent of a middle schooler, right? Like you don't hear a whole lot about what's happening in schools. You have to like cry getting from anything, right? And some of the best stories are about Mr. Schilling. And some of the best emails. Look at this email Mr. Schilling just sent to the school community. Like they have a ton of respect for you. And that will continue, but it'll be nice.
You want to get on board? All right, and stick around. You want to start?
Yeah, probably should. Some stuff on here.
You're welcome to stick around. I won't make it.
Still a place.
Yeah, you're not done yet. You got 3 more days, so I still have a list for you.
Okay, all right. Okay, we're good on that. Moving on, the HVAC proposal, which has come up a couple of times in the committee, I'm gonna give it over to the superintendent, let me talk through some of what we have right now. As you can see by the, I think they're not actionable.
So we got one proposal. And this proposal went in a direction that I was not expecting. Way back, dial back to 2020, when we started this work, with Trucks Collins and their engineering firms and New England Air and et cetera, when they have looked at the situation with the ERU units on the roof, their engineering study that they did in their proposal that they brought forward was we got 8 units up there, and they said you don't need 8, you can put slightly bigger units in and handle the entire existing building was 4. And they engineered everything, the roof will take the slightly heavier units, and it was going to take installing some additional duct work to hook in 4 units where 8 used to be, but duct work is cheaper than ERU units. Somehow this thing morphed into, let's do a 1-for-1 replacement of the units. And I still have, to be honest, some unresolved questions about the efficacy of going down that path, because there were some technical reasons why Truax and their engineers, et cetera, DEW and New England Air said some of the units that you have right now are probably not appropriate. There's units that are right up at the edge of a roof. And they said if we go and replace those units, some of those units are not going to pass OSHA inspection because you have to have a certain clearance around them to work on them, et cetera, et cetera. So I want to take this back to the drawing board and see what happened and how did we veer off that course. This thing came in at a cost of quite a bit higher than what we have been told in 2020 would be the cost to redesign the system with fewer ERUs. And granted, everything's got more expensive, so it's a little hard to say. You can't compare, the original design at those cost points in 2020, early 2021 with this. It's not a direct comparison, but I want to go back and we don't have the opinion of other contractors. We have one proposal. So it was a warrant for action. I want to back up a little bit and go back to the drawing board a little bit and make sure that we're going in the right direction. You should keep in mind that when you spend this money on this building, this is $1 million proposal, okay? $1,180,000, $1,200,000. If you did this today, you would be, I just learned a new term the other day from the guy at the state, at the agency. you talk about stranded costs, and you put money into an existing building, you are committing a certain expense to that building that 2 or 3 years down the road, 4 years down the road, you might regret spending that money. And I say that because we are still not resolved, as far as I understand, we're still not resolved on the direction we're gonna go in the renovation project. And, I know the people, I know the people are opposed, and understandably, to doing anything right now because the community is gonna have to bear 100% of the cost. But if school construction money comes down the road at some point in the future, the attitude perspectives of investing in this school may change. So I don't want to jump on this and just say this is not only because we only have one proposal and it's a big
That's
project.
reason enough, but
That's reason enough. But I think that I want to go back with Sean and take a closer look at why are we going in this direction instead of taking advantage of engineering work that was already done that told us how to eliminate 4 of the ERUs.
so some of the questions that you might want to answer, get answered in that is, was it possible to go from 8 units to 4 units because the walls were demolished? And in this scenario, you don't demolish the walls, that might be a reason to add the additional interior ductwork for less money, because the walls were gone in that plan. And another question that came up at our advisory meeting, another clarification from Sean, is some of these things sat on the ground. And which meant they might be movable in a future situation where they might, while they're still alive, be able to be reused. So that's a couple of things that we heard about, that one that is a possibility and one that may be a reality. So I don't know the answer to those questions.
Those are good questions, and I don't know the answer to them either, but I think before we commit to spending that kind of money, one of the things that I talked to Sean about is that there's a couple of these units that are physically inside the building, and you can't even take the old units out. And so in order to replace them, quote unquote, you have to install the unit outside. It's going to replace it and then duct it into the building. So I think, if I'm remembering, and it's been a while, but I think the part of the idea of going to 4 units was not having to do some of that stuff. Some of it had to do with safety and OSHA requirements. Some of it had to do with how do we replace the capacity without having to do,
I think some of that might have been walls off though, so I think that,
it could be, So
I would just say,
I think
if you're looking at it, that's the question that I would.
Yeah.
I'm gonna ask Rob, anything else?
Perhaps it's a bit if you review what the existing pay estimate is now. And if it's adequate to get to the next year. And that you've got on any I haven't anticipated that would be a problem in the future.
Yeah, I think that's where we were. This wasn't going to be a this summer project.
Okay.
With the lead time, we talked about that last year. With the lead time that there is, it's not going to be something that we can look to do or look to fund. Maybe after budget. I don't know if you by the way, a long lead in, so that we make sure that we get it done quickly, so it's not disruptive.
Right.
That's
right. We don't have the money today to do this. We're going to have to ask the town for extra money.
Right.
And that's done in a budget article or a separate article.
Budgetary or extra budgetary, one or the other.
One or the other, yeah.
Okay.
So.
Are there questions from the board about this? Not moving forward until we get some more information and the superintendent involving himself with the facilities director and trying to figure out and get some more bids and why we have this bid in the way to exchange. There you go.
Yeah.
Administration, good to go. All right. And moving on. Moving on to, specifically, this one's going to be me, the 70 fund update about the outdoor basketball court. In a few minutes, hey, thank you, Rob. In a few minutes, we're going to get an update on our health fund account, how much money is in each of them. I had an email exchange that I shared with you the first half of with Marvin Fisher. I had a separate email exchange with the superintendent unrelated, and he said, probably don't want to be committing any more of the 70 funds anytime soon because of fluctuations in the market and how much money is not in there currently. I had Marvin's point as well, that that's something mapped out that they want to do with the money. And we have not yet gotten a look at the actual fund itself to take to a lawyer to see whether that's feasible, whether even it would be possible, legal to do the playground into that. And even if it's legal, it may not be proven. Sort of where I left it.
I believe playground is totally.
Playground, I think I mean playground basketball court specifically.
And a word that was mentioned was competitive. I don't believe the word competitive is in the endowment.
So we didn't get a copy of the endowment that to look at. Should I did you want to find that or should I see it from Mark? I don't know where it is. I can tell you that I don't think I've ever actually seen the piece of paper. But in the last 70 fund update that we got with Mr. Pritchard there, he said that they have some plans to do some building work on the town grounds that we talked about, and that may encumber most of the funds that are available in the community. So if we look into this and the playground basketball court, if we can get a quote on that, it may be best served coming from capital funds. But for right now, we have no action on this, and once we get that contract, we can send it to the superintendent, who will then open up a legal account, and then that legal account at Mr. Pritchard's request will come, as since he really administers the fund more than we do. Our role is they'll have better institutional knowledge than us to start with. So if we can seek some clarity that way, then we might know better what's going on. So David, if you think you can find that, that's fine. If not, I can ask Marvin Fisher if he has it. And if you can't find it, just email it to me and Mark, and we'll take it from there.
I don't know why it's upside down, but I will.
Okay. Does anybody else on that? Okay. So for right now, we're no action on the playground. We don't have a quote anyway. We don't have we may not have funding, 70 funds for that, and those funds may be encumbered. Moving next to the hiring update. When we last spoke, we had a couple of positions open. Are there updates? I haven't heard of any. We have that other weird hiring thing we can do, so I don't know if anything happened. It was on here just to be on here.
So I'm a meeting with a world language candidate tomorrow. So that looks promising.
Okay.
They pulled another rabbit out of his hat.
All right.
Or Sarah did, I don't know. Or Natalie did, I don't know. Somebody did. Dave. Yeah, so
We filled the triple E special educator position that's shared with us and Barney. That's been since the last
Is that a preschool?
preschool.
That's the one.
triple E, yeah, that's your board name.
I saw that name.
E,
Blake,
um,
still need a middle school special educator.
you'll need a middle school special educator. That's probably the biggest one. Maybe not that right now.
And
How are we on non-professional staff?
We need 3, so not very many. Most of those, well, again, maybe it's 4, maybe it's 2 in elementary and 2 in high school. One of those is still.
We two.
I wasn't even looking at that.
The Denver Works assistant position.
Yeah.
It's really good. What they did.
So we need another high school support staff because we hired Nat Bacon to fill our middle school special or middle school English ELA position.
First, he costs Iron Man costs you a sub, and then now he costs you.
Exactly. Yeah.
He just keeps working his way up.
We does. And then get one of our triple E preschool in classroom has resigned, so we have that position to fill. And we've got a couple new kiddos coming in, so we're anticipating having to fill 1 more.
I know that's an ongoing,
Yeah.
it's an ongoing cycle of always needing I might be with it, with the new salary, something more competitive.
Yes, I've got federal interviews lined up for Thursday. I'm hopeful.
Anybody have to hire? Board member? All right, moving on, review of health funding.
Yeah.
So we asked this at the last meeting. And we got some information in the packet. Bring that page.
It's a little bigger. So, in terms of the, Fund One, the unrestricted fund, we started out the audited ending unrestricted surplus on 6/30/22, which is a year ago, was 516,400, $648, sorry, my Wi-Fi, $648. Mike had talked about, a potential risk of tuition revenue shortfall, when we talked about budgeting for FY24, if we didn't get these short 6 students. But he also told me the other day, he said that the numbers are looking pretty good in terms of even though we had that shortfall, there's been some savings in other areas. What he doesn't know yet is he hasn't done what's called the true ups. So when the books close on June 30th, we have to give back to each of the districts any money that was in the budget that we took from the districts to operate that we didn't need to spend. So he's projecting that he will be returning some money to Danville from the closing out the FY23 budget. He just doesn't know the number yet. We won't know that until the books are closed. But projections look pretty good. So this number up here right now, based on what he knows, what he's projecting for 6/30/23 is unrestricted fund surplus of $396,648, but that number does not reflect you agreed to spend money from that unrestricted fund to pay for the lighting project. So that hasn't been $114,000. So that's coming out of that money, but that's not a final number. The 396,648. So that may be a little higher when he does the true ups. The mission and vision reserve fund is still got 45,200.
It's got $4,000 less than that.
Okay,
We did a,
that's right. We took some money out of that.
literacy, we paid somebody, so $4,100.
41,000. No.
No, 4,100.
Yeah.
Oh,
we
we
got-
took 4,100
Yeah, down
out.
to 41,000.
Okay. 27,670 in the capital fund at the end of last fiscal year. I don't think we directly tapped the capital fund.
We did, we thought we were going to.
We thought
we
we didn't. So the 70 fund, we've been spending that fund down, $41,000 for field maintenance. In FY23, commitment of another 20,000 after July 1st for field maintenance. The return on the investment, we can only spend the interest, and we have to leave the principal in there. And it was as high as 690,000 at the end of in June 30th of 2020. There's $581,000 in there. You can't spend 540 of that. So right now you have $41,000 in flexible money that you could spend. My recommendation is just kind of pause. Well, Mike's recommendation, he's saying if you absolutely have to do it, spend it, but nice to have. You should be careful around that because you could spend that available cash down to zero and then be sitting there for a couple of years waiting to have.
But it's using the annual field maintenance.
Right. So we should be really careful with that.
That's the purpose of the funds.
Right. And then we've got a fund aid and restricted endowment fund. We paid scholarships out of that. We paid out $15,000 in FY23, still $559,000.
So where's the fund on here with the library? Where's the brainer fund?
It's not on here.
So there was when we talked about these in January as part of the budget meetings, you sent a whole list of all of the different funds, and that's where what we looked at
Right,
when David pulled that wonderful thought
Right.
out of there.
out of the brainer.
That day, I know.
So that's not on here, so you might have missed it.
So we might dig that one up and get us that one, and then we'll know better where we are.
There's a couple others I think around that list too.
Okay,
And there's full, I mean, the Ira Preston fund is another one that we use.
So if somebody can send back a piece of paper back to Mike, then Mike will know what piece of paper to look for to get updated.
all right,
I'll find when you sent that.
okay.
I asked Mike, I mean, that Preston fund, there should have been $7,000 being spent on the shop fees. We wanted to, microphones, the market's down, the fund's not doing well. Technically, there's $4,000 in the Preston fund. On the first day of meeting. Oh,
Needed to put us time and. Don't want to give you your Schwab account. Don't even want to know.
Yeah.
So that's where we are minus that drainage fund. We know a lot of these funds are encumbered and we're probably still in okay shape if there's a major emergency, but less good shape than we have been in the past.
Right,
And we're taking some action. We're looking at some stuff.
Right.
Are there questions? No questions. Okay. Moving on, in the packet as well were 2 required policies. They just got passed, this afternoon at 5:30, we're on our second reading at the CCSU level. Fire and emergency preparedness and access and visitor control management policies that came down mandatory from the state. And those get passed on behalf of this board at the CCSU level. We read through them at our regular bi-monthly meeting in the CCSU. We were properly warned, we came in tonight, properly warned, properly ready, vote was passed. Those policies are now passed on behalf of Danville by the CCSU board. If you have it in your packet, are there any questions about those policies? All right.
I would just say that those policies, our practices generally in all the schools in SU are more robust than what the policies would call. So we do these are minimum number of drills that are required. This is minimum requirements for entry access. There's some things we're talking about here at the school to improve access control that we'll talk about in the executive session later on. We did have to, the legislature required us to adopt the policies by August 1st.
Good.
It was nice of the CCSU board to do that, however, I think we should vote on this ourselves.
So they're required policies, and so it's legally, it's not our job to do.
Well, it's not our job, but we can make a statement that we approve of this.
I can't, I'm not one for action here. So I can't take a motion. I take an affirmation. You can affirm the vote if you'd like. I can affirm the vote. Would you care to affirm the vote of the CCSU that we approve of
Yes.
numbers? Okay. So Dave Toll would like to affirm on behalf of this board that we approve of the passing of required policies F3 and F4 regarding fire and emergency preparedness and access control and disease management. Danville School. So that's a yay or a nay, and then we'll take it as an affirmation. Have you got a yay or a nay?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll take it. I'm a yay as well. Affirm that. That's good. Next thing we have on our agenda is we'd like to go into an executive session, if possible, specifically in accordance with 1 BSA 31310, security or response measures, the disclosure of which could disclose public safety. This will be a discussion item in executive session. But I'd like to go into an executive session. I entertain that motion. I'd like to go into executive session. And also like to invite the administration and that on. I'll make that motion. And we'll make that motion. By second by Melissa. And what I'd like to do now is, any questions about that? We're ready going to, all in favor of going to an executive session at 6:49, we can. All in favor? Motion carried on that executive session,
Okay, we're back on the record at 7:01.
7:01, back out of executive session. We're gonna take some action.
There's Andrew still in the lobby.
No, he left.
I would like to motion that we accept the quote of the Royal Groups for 2009. 1 sentence for security measures.
I have a motion to accept the bid for Royal Group for security measures 2297861. I have a second. Is there any discussion here?
Where we paying?
Can I, that's, we might,
So we need to pay for this out of leadership funds.
Yeah.
Not budget, yeah. We need to pay for the fund. So we've got to amend the motion.
I would love to.
Before we amend this motion, I say, unrestricted funds. We were down to, a negative of 296, money coming back. Yep, okay. Okay, motion, second. 22978 of unrestricted funds. I'll call the question. All in favor? Please say aye. 22978 461 motion carries. All right, that's that. Thank you. Okay, moving on here now. We got public input? Any public input?
Open public.
Hearing none. We'll move on. Future agenda items, next meeting date. We'll do future agenda items first. We're probably gonna hear back on HVAC proposal.
When are we meeting again?
That's, I haven't gotten to that.
Oh,
yet.
that's what I was trying to
We'll
figure out.
do the future agenda items first, and then we determine
Okay,
how soon we need it. Then we're gonna hear back on a hiring update hopefully soon. We're currently in a position where we can make hires right now via the other method, so we're okay on that. We want to like to meet on that. We're gonna expect an email with the health fund accounts, but not, just a document release. Not anything else. We may hear back at the, Dave sent for the 70 fund. We may hear back about the legality on the 70 fund, the outdoor basketball field. And that may just be an email as well. And that's all that I know about. For this is the July meeting. As of right now, we don't have anything on the agenda that's necessarily pressing for August. And in the first week of August, there's BSA and BPA meeting that sort of usurp our time. And so what I'm gonna propose to you guys that we don't schedule any meetings right now past the community meeting we have that we just scheduled for to warn the vote, the warn meeting. If we don't schedule a meeting until our September meeting, but if something comes up, I'll ask you for your availability to have a special meeting.
We have to add what Molly brought up.
Molly's
No,
Mark.
I emailed with her back and forth offline and I'm working on answering.
That's not, it's not any board action. We may have to have that in the future. So if we're okay, we won't schedule a meeting until our September meeting, which is somebody.
September 5th.
September the 5th is our next scheduled meeting. And if we need to meet in the meantime, then we'll jump in and discuss it with the Google meeting time or something like that. Is that cool with everybody?
Absolutely.
All right, so I'll see you on the 19th if you're available or whatever day.
The 18th, the vote's on the 19th. You're
On the
gonna,
19th. Or after that, I won't see you. If I see you in the, if I see you in the street, go the other way. All right. Most of you destroyed. Okay, that is the end of the meeting. The only thing else on the agenda is to adjourn. I entertain a motion. Got it. For a second, got it. All in favor? At 7:04, we are.
well, we're drinking lecture tonight.
No, half an hour.